The complementarity idea in quantum physics is identified and defined as the following. The principle that objects have complementary properties which cannot all be observed or measured simultaneously. Now, I am very much interested in quantum physics. I don't know too much about the math that it involves, but I've always liked the theory and the implications that come from what scientists have discovered in quantum physics. And the best way to identify what this includes would be the idea that light, as you may know, can be seen on a quantum level as being both a particle and a wave. And this duality makes it really hard for scientists to be able to measure the momentum and position at the same time, because the particle is literally both at the same time. And this is really confusing and very much at odds with our common sense ideas. Now, it is and has always been fascinating to me that light can be both a particle and a wave, and there is the idea of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which was proposed by Heisenberg in 1927. And this is, again, the idea that when you're measuring light, you cannot measure both the position and the momentum at the same time. And this is definitely very interesting because it leads to the idea that you can't have certainty, or at least complete certainty, when it comes to things that are very small. And while it is clear that on a macro level, when we are looking at everyday objects, that we can measure both the momentum and position at the same time, it does seem very interesting that at a smaller level, at literally the quantum level, things start to become very uncertain, fuzzy, confusing, and contradictory. And I've always found that to be interesting, because I think that it allows us to consider the idea that the complementarity principle or idea is relevant in other aspects of our lives. I think about this in the concept and context of ideas that we may hold that can both be true at the same time. It is definitely complicated to have the idea that things can be both simultaneously true at the same time. And so there are a lot of ways of looking at this, and yet I think what is most important about this concept is the idea that everyday life can also possess counterintuitive notions, because there are things that can be simultaneously true, just like light being a particle and a wave at the same time, that is very contradictory. And I think what you end up getting out of the complementarity idea is more of an emphasis on things in the world as not being always intuitive, that they will contradict and they will confuse us. I think about this in terms of my own life and how there are aspects of myself that are often in tension and often contradictory, that they can both be true at the same time. I think about this in terms of knowledge and the understanding of the world, that there might be other principles that are contradictory and that don't always make sense. And so if the idea that comes out of quantum physics is the idea that things may not be what they seem, that we may want to be certain, but instead have to be uncertain, we may want to be certain that something is true, even though it may perhaps, in a true complementarity way, be true and false at the same time, it does defy logic. It does defy this idea that things can both be true at the same time, and this idea that two things cannot be both simultaneously true comes from Aristotle, and yet that notion, according to quantum physics, is certainly much more complicated than we would have thought. So this has definitely encouraged me in the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom and understanding and of science and all of the various ways in which I think about the world, that what I may think may actually spend more time in uncertainty, and what I know may be more uncertain than I would ever realize. And the reason is because it is contradictory. And the more that I can live in that uncertainty and not be so certain that something that I think is so true, the more that I think I can be open to the world. And the more that I can see the world as being contradictory, but in a beautiful way. And how that definitely is not a bad thing. I think we are certainly wired for certainty, as has been stated before. And it does seem as though it is very easy for us to think that things are certain and that we have a certain way of looking at things that will be true no matter what anyone says. But what's always interesting about this idea is that may not be true. There are definitely many things that are contradictory in life, and I have learned through time to have a more open-ended perspective with the universe, because the universe is always surprising us, not even just in the realm of science, but also in the social world, and in our biological world, and in the various modes and layers in which we live in reality. And I just love that idea. I think there is a lot of depth and complexity that you can find in such ideas. So yeah, I'm Phoenix, and I was super excited to talk about complementarity and the Heisenberg uncertainty principle in this episode of Phoenix Discovers the Universe. I encourage you to check out my previous episode on the Anthropic Principle, which is also in this series. And yes, I'm just trying to discover the universe. I find that having an open mind and being uncertain about things instead of establishing it as being 100% true all the time and as being unable to question my own beliefs, to be honestly very important. While I've described the ways in which we do need to not be too skeptical about things, I think uncertainty provides a healthy outlet and a healthy way of being open to the things that will indeed contradict what we may think is true. And I find that to be very powerful. So yeah, I'm super excited about this series that I've been doing, and I hope to do more episodes in the future. I'm very stoked to be able to do more episodes. So yeah, I'm Phoenix, thank you for watching, and yeah, I will see you next time. There will be much more content to come, and yes, thank you for watching. I will see you next time.